Just a couple more seconds.
Okay.
Can you see if people jump onto it?
And
We can also tell by the participant number, can't we? Krista,
okay, guys.
all set? Good. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the May 11th, 2020 board meeting for the Mad River Local Board of Education. At this time, if you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation,
Under God.
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay, at this time, Mr. Ellender, if you would please call the roll.
Mrs. Denning,
Here.
Mrs. Newhouse,
yes.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Hubble.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Ellender. Mr. Wien, under super special guest, I see Ms. Rastetter has just joined us. Do you want to put her here or is she further down in your report? Good evening.
She's actually under new business, but welcome, Ms. Rastetter. Thank you for being part of our meeting tonight.
Okay, I'm trying to find it here. Okay. was
Hey,
that it?
everybody.
Got it there.
Hi.
I see you there. Hi, Andrea. Okay. With that, we will move on to, I see any district updates we need to know about, Chad, off the bat?
No district updates. A lot of that will be included in my superintendent reports.
Correct. That's what I was assuming. So thank you. Recognition of visitor comments. We certainly don't have any at this time unless Mrs. Rastetter would like to say something to us. Okay. All right. Moving on to superintendent's report for a COVID-19 update, Mr. Wien.
Okay, have several updates for you this evening. And along the way, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to let me know. First, I'd like to just let you guys know, and we talked about it briefly, we did add Aurora Park as an additional feeding site. We realized that there were some families in the park or in that Aurora Park area that did not have access to transportation. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to give them access to food for their students. So we were able to distribute 50 total breakfast and lunches, 5-day bags to families in Aurora Park. And we will continue with that site. So basically we're taking 50 meals from Mad River Middle and we're taking those over to Aurora Park. That worked out really well. Continue with Spinning Hills. That's probably been our best site as far as distribution, and then Stebbins and Mad River Middle, and usually people kind of trickle into Mad River Middle, but we were able to give away all our food last week, and I know some families are starting to go back to work now. Some may have some access to groceries that they didn't have in the past couple of weeks, so it's worked out really well so far. We'll continue this Friday and next Friday. The 22nd will be our last Friday, and then we'll transition over to the summer feeding, and I'll talk to that point in a little bit as we go through our items here. The second piece, distance learning on 4/20. I sent out an email to the entire district about phase 1 and phase 2 of our reopening plan. Included in that was a piece about distance learning and the fact that we were going to investigate what we can do to make sure that we have a good process in place in the event that we have to continue this, or if learning looks a little bit different in the fall. So that was included to a communication that went out to the entire district on the 20th. Since then, we had several staff members that saw that communication and they were interested in either being part of the curriculum instruction group or the operations group, which is great. Both of those groups will be meeting soon. The operations group will be meeting next week, and I believe, Krista, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys will be meeting in 2 weeks.
We're going to give it a little more time just to give Rise a chance to, get going. And there are guinea pigs. I keep saying that, but giving them a chance to, we're working through some pieces with them. And I think Nisha's going to talk a little bit more about RISE in a few, but so yeah, it's probably going to be a little bit further out than 2 weeks, but because we want to get RISE going and see, are the pieces that we're putting in place working well? And is this something that we want to take into the fall?
And then what I'll do with the operations agenda, I'll have to go back and look. Did I include you guys on the Outlook invite for that? Did I include the board in that?
I don't think so, but you know, I only take about 20 of them a day from you.
I'll go back and look. If you guys weren't included in that, then I'll send that to you, and the agenda's on there. You guys are welcome to attend those if you'd like, or I can just continue to update you guys through the board meetings as well. Some of those updates will also come out through that timeline of events that I put together for you to review as we continue going through that process. So I will, after our meeting tonight, I'll go back and then I'll look invite, and you'll see the agenda for that whole, the whole meeting for operations. A lot of it deals with just the whole logistics of the district, from feeding to transportation to the operations daily of school. And basically, if we have to go on one of 3 different schedules, kind of a normal day with protocols in place, to be scheduled to complete distance learning. So we'll have a couple different options that we'll put together and make sure that we have everything covered. And then I'll put that out to you guys. But in the meantime, I'll make sure that I send an invite to you as well. I couldn't remember if I did or I didn't.
Hey, Chad.
About that.
I don't think the superintendent's report was in the packets, it's sounding like. So I don't know if, as you're going item through item, maybe just saying that or sharing your screen, whatever you want to do, but it wasn't part of the packet.
Yeah, these are just notes that I'm sharing now.
Oh, okay.
A lot of it's just based on the timeline that I send out to the board that updates them on everything. So in respect to those 2 distance learning groups or committees that we're working with, one thing is what Krista mentioned, and that is the summer school pilot, which will allow us to trial some things based on just the curriculum instructional piece for the district on a smaller group of students, that if in fact we have to deploy this in the fall, then we have a different process in place, and or it might be something that we can also use in the future, thinking about meeting the needs of the learners in matter of. I'll let Krista and Nisha talk about the summer school pilot program, and Andrea is also part of that group. So we have 3 members of that committee, and they can give you guys some really good insight on that.
Okay, well, as you know, RISE is our summer program for kindergarten through 6th grade. And this summer it will be virtual. We have 21 employees participating in some way in the development of the program. And we have representation from every building K through 12. So even though it's a K through 6 program, we do have teachers, a few that are from Spinning, Mad River Middle, and Stebbins. And we feel like, as Chad had mentioned, that this is going to give us a lot of data and information for the future distance learning programs. And one of the reasons our group, the curriculum group, is waiting a little bit is that we think we're kind of getting a lot of data and information from this group that will help direct us toward what we would want to do in the future with distance learning, because there are so many exciting things that we can do to make it more meaningful for children. And that's, really our goal. And Andrea is our instructional support. Sarah Narker is our instructional leader for the summer school. And they're meeting with teachers by Zoom several times a week. And then Andrea and Sarah and Krista and I are meeting once a week to see where we are, what tech issues there are, what current academic issues there are, what timing issues there are, because it's coming up pretty quickly here. And then we can deal with those as they come up. And we're really excited about this program because I think the outcome of this gives us so much information for the future, depending on what we need. We don't know what we're going to need for distance learning in the future, but this is going to prepare us to be able to do a more effective program. And the fact that we have teachers from every building in the district, I think is also helpful because they can train the trainers, can work with other teachers in the building to help them. And all of that makes it a much smoother transition. And we'll make sure that technology is provided to students who need it, students who don't have access to that now. We have the tech department working with that. And so I think as of right now, it's going really well. We're all a bit nervous about it because it's coming up pretty quickly and there's a lot to do, but we're working really hard to make that happen. So Krista, did you or Andrea have a little bit more that you wanted to add to what I've said?
I'll let Andrea talk, but I popped in on one of their meetings that Andrea and Sarah were running with teachers today, and I just thought it was really good, just the brainstorming that's going on with the teachers. And Andrea made a point of saying, this is going to be messy. We're going to learn by trial and error, and just encouraging the teachers because we want eventually to have an amazing product. And I was in another little breakout room, and I was with Sarah, and Sarah was just talking, everything we've talked about, consistency, just all these pieces. It was just a really good conversation. And it was literally scheduled this morning, and there were many participants because they've been meeting with these teachers. Like Nisha said, multiple times a week. So they met on Friday, then they met again today, and the wheels are turning. So it is pretty cool. So I'll let, if Andrea wants to jump in on anything.
A lot of wheels turning. So the only thing I would say that's been really neat about it that I've loved so far is that every time we're meeting with the teachers, we're trying to actually do some PD on different tech and different platforms within that. And that's probably been my favorite part just so far, just to have so many teachers on today that were like, how did you guys do that? How did you do those breakouts? Because I really believe, right, the more they have to do it is how you learn. And all these tech platforms, just having your hands in it and doing it yourself. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to trial a lot of things now in case we need to be like ready to go, bigger scale. So that's been fun.
Yeah.
Is attendance going to be required on this one since, you talked to teachers and they said, well, out of 24, I had 20 show up today, and we're not holding anybody really accountable for any of this. And RISE, is that going to be different?
Well, in RISE, we just will really work to make sure that children that we're losing and not seeing, that we get them involved. It's not required. It's not a required program. We are selecting the students we think need to be there, and we're going to work really hard to get them there. And that might be a daily phone call. That might be all of us working together with those families to try to make sure they have the connectivity and that they're able to do it. And we will take attendance like we always do in RISE, but we don't, it is not required. It's not a required state program. It's not a required program, but our goal is to get as many kids involved as we can, and we're really focused on struggling students.
So how many are we targeting, Nisha, as far as students?
I'm sorry, what?
How many are we targeting as far as number of students attending?
Well, we have 105 of the students returning.
Okay.
And another letter went out to basically 100 and some more to try to see of those students which ones we can get to attend. So that's kind of an ongoing, trying to get the attendance and get them involved, knowing that it's online, finding out what their needs are in order to keep it going.
So I might have missed this, I'm sorry, but is this going to be they're encouraged to log in at certain times, just like they would during a school day? Or is this going to be a learn as you go?
We hope to have a lot of structure to it. That's still in process, but we want a lot of structure involved where there'll be a certain time each day they check in. There will be certain things happening throughout the day. There will be some things they can do at other times in the day, a link to something, but our goal is to make it very consistent every single day for those students.
Just curious, because I know with some of the things the governor has said, I've had a few questions about well, what is this going to look like? Because if I'm back at work, I can't be there to monitor, and or they're going to be in a daycare center eventually, or stuff like that. So I was just wondering how that was.
Right.
And I thought that's what you were leaning towards, but I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Routine for sure.
Yeah.
So what about other districts? Or do we have other districts putting this on too, or are they, are we collaborating if there are, or how's that working? Is it?
Well, we've worked with the county a little bit. They were offering to help us because they have in the past with some of the enrichments and some of the field trips. Right now, we're such at a beginning stage of trying to get all this together. We weren't even sure what to ask them for yet, but they are willing to help support us. This same program goes on in Trotwood, but we've always cooperated somewhat with Trotwood, but we've also had our own specifics that we want, and Trotwood wanted also that were separate needs for the different types of districts. And so we're going to continue with that. And then I just keep the county updated on what we are doing and where we are. And there may be a point in time we need them to do some things. For example, work with the STEM program. They may end up putting some packets together for us if we need that. They've done that in the past, but we're still deciding those things. And when Andrea and Sarah and Krista and I meet Wednesday, we'll kind of see where we are on that.
We had funding on this before. I know Vectren was real big in it. I know we stopped doing Vectren. They don't do it anymore with us. But
No.
we do have some funding coming, right?
No, there's no funding, state funding or anything for this program.
But Vectren does Trotwood's funding, so why don't they do our funding? Not anymore.
No, I mean, as far as I know, they don't anymore.
Okay.
Just Bell?
Vectren just stopped doing that?
Yeah,
They-
it's pretty common for places like Vectren to want to do a program for a period of years and then they move on to some other type of program. So we knew when they started that it would probably only be 5 years.
But this is supported by Bell, right? The outfit out of, is it Baltimore?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
This is our own program.
Okay.
Once we left Bell because they, we didn't have this financial support. And we
Okay.
basically took
Knew
the good things from the program that we had and added our own things. And so now, no, it's completely funded by Mad River.
Okay.
Okay.
Have you gotten any calls from other districts? And I'm just curious. I was on a state call, I think Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening, and I was talking to the student achievement liaison team. And I just kind of rolled out our summer program, and that got everybody's attention. Whoa, 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 what summer program? We can't even go back to school. What summer program are you talking about? And I told them what we were doing. They were interested in knowing more about it. And I said, well, it's all virtual this year. In years past, obviously, we went to places and did things. And I said, I can't even tell you, what it's going to look like because we're still kind of in the process of the infancy trying to develop what we're doing. But you might get some calls, Krista,
Okay.
to somebody.
I did have a call from an HR director maybe it was last week, some point in time,
Okay.
just asking what we were doing. So
Yeah, they were curious. It raised a lot of eyebrows. I didn't realize there weren't that many people doing what we're doing on that. So it's good. Okay. Anything else on that?
We've been really proactive. I mean, I think you guys realize that from the first time we rolled out our packets to where we are in planning for our summer programming and even for next year. I think we've been out in front the entire time, and I appreciate the support that you guys have given us too. I mean, Scott and I have pretty much evening conversations on all of this because it is important to have a plan, and we can't go in, blind like a lot of districts did when March 16th, 17th rolled around, and there were people just completely unprepared. So I do appreciate everything that Krista, Nisha, and Andrea has put into planning out that group and the summer programming. And we're not there yet, but we're going to get there. And by the time it's all said and done, we'll have a really good product and we'll be able to share that with people. So I'm glad you shared that, Scott.
Yeah. I'll just add, since you mentioned that, Chad and I have seen a document that is being worked on by, I believe, ODE, and I think BASA is at the table, and OSBA is at the table, and a few other folks. to work on a reset, restart for next year. And we, both Chad and I, we saw it from different entities. It's nothing we can share. It's still fairly high level. It's really just a small framework, I guess you would say, Chad. There wasn't really a whole lot of nuts and bolts to it as to how it would work. But, you know, you could see a lot of the questions that were being asked for consideration of what's it going to look like when you go back next year? What are all the factors that you need to consider? And it's really, I mean, if you sit there and look at it for too long, it can get overwhelming. I think that's the best word to say for it. And I wasn't supposed to share that the document was out, that they're working on it. It's not something we can share. But I didn't realize Chad had seen it, and Chad didn't realize I'd seen it. We got to talking. We both seen the same document. So they are working at it at a state level. I think we'll be, I don't know, surprised. I don't know if surprised is a word, but they're certainly putting a lot of effort into getting the restart put into place. What we don't want to have happen this year at the beginning of the school year is what happened, you know, with graduation, where we make plans and then they come out with another plan to say to do something else. So I think they've heard the word loud and clear at ODE and other places, governor's office, wherever, that we need a plan, we need it set, and we can't waffle on what it is and where it goes. So they're working hard on it now to make sure we get that sooner rather than later so we can start making adjustments. So I don't know, Chad, I don't know if you have anything else to say to that, but
No, that was perfect.
straightforward. Okay. Chad, go ahead.
One thing coming out this week, and this is exciting, is our, you know, every year annually we do the College and Career Signing Day at Stebbins High School and celebrate our students. Myself, Mrs. Simpson, we both speak, and then we have the class president speak, student president speak, and they just talk about their experience at Stebbins. And so we do have a video coming out this week. We had over 100 and some students participate and send in their picture with either what career field they're going into, whether they're going into the military and what branch, or what college they're going to. So look for that later this week. Jenny's finalizing that, and it should be a really nice video that highlights our seniors going into graduation. As far as graduation, caps and gowns are out and distributed. They have a couple that are there, but overall they had a really good distribution of caps and gowns. I don't know if you've seen any posts or not, but the staff today has been out and about putting signs in the senior yards. Did a really nice job of that, and they were really excited to be active participants in putting the signs in the yards. So I know Mrs. Simpson wasn't quite sure how much participation she would have, because there are some reservations still about, you know, being out in public and that, and I understand that, but there were a large number of staff members that went out and participated. So just another way to celebrate our senior class of 2020. That was really cool. The timeline I sent you guys is updated through 5/5, and I'll continue to update that this week. We did have our packet turn in last week on the 6th for all buildings, and then the 7th for Stebbins that Thursday. It went really well. We do have some still trickling in. I am getting some numbers in from principals, and right now the return rate's between 85 and 90%, not including the packets that were emailed directly to the teachers. So once we get that count, we'll have a better idea of the overall percentage of return. You know, I was really pleasantly surprised with the first return, that first packet that we sent out. So the second one, I wasn't sure how engaged we would keep our learners out there. Our teachers have done a really good job. You know, we're all sending out messages constantly, and we had a really good overall so far. What I've seen is a pretty darn good engagement for that packet that's come back. The final project went out. I don't know if you guys saw Facebook today, but Krista prompted some people along with a message that she put out, which was really nice. And there were some cute pictures of families that are participating in Find the Kind. I think the last time I looked, there were over 20 some families that had commented on there, posted pictures of their students doing various projects around Mad River or the city of Riverside. So that was really cool. I look forward to seeing more of those projects displayed and shared throughout the community. So excited because this is the first week that they're really engaging in these projects, and the whole premise behind it is find the kind MRLS, be someone's reason. All these hashtags that Julie and I were part of creating in that, and it's just neat to see our community engaging in that. So I know Krista's going to continue kind of pushing and nudging that along, and she did a great job showcasing that today. Summer feeding, that's going to change a little bit because summer school changed this year. So typically Stevenson's a big feeding site because that's where we house Rise, and that won't be the case this year. So we're going to focus on 3 sites and see how that goes, and then we'll see if we need to add an additional site. And there are 3 most highly attended sites. So we'll have a site at Roar Park, we'll have a site at Overlook, and we'll have a site at BG, and then we'll assess that and see if there's any additional needs to add sites. But typically those are our most well-attended sites overall. We're still working and waiting through guidance, whether it has to be a grab and go, or if it'll look more traditional with what we've done in the past for summer feeding. So once I find out about that, then I'll give you guys more information about the summer feeding program. So that is all for my superintendent's reports. Do you guys have any additional questions at all?
Chad, I have one question concerning graduation.
Yeah.
And with moving the board members to wherever they're picking up their final packet of information, and that takes 4 people out of what was going to be the balcony area, but you're only going to allow 2 to replace those 4 for families. Is that what I understood from the letter you sent out?
So kind of. It's going to look similar to the map that I sent out that had a diagram with the families in the auditorium on the lower level. So we'll have 2 family members up top for the student, and then we'll have 2 in queue in the back, so we can rotate these families in and out of there. So there'll actually be 4 people replacing the 4 board members in the auditorium and the balcony, and they're going to continue to cycle through just like we will on the lower level of balcony.
So 2 families with 2 each in the balcony, then that's where you're doing the 4, right?
Correct.
Okay.
We'll have 2 down, so there'll be
2 on the floor and 2 on the balcony, right?
I'm sorry, Scott.
2 on the floor and 2 in the balcony for one family.
There'll be and we'll have 2 families in each area at any given time as we rotate the students through graduation. We have it all marked off and taped off, so they're kind of waiting in queue. Once family A finishes and family B is in line, then they go up, their student goes up, next family comes in to both spaces, and rotating this through. So Krista will be up top. I told her today that she's been told to help assist up top in the auditorium. So she'll help out up there, moving families along with the family in queue and the family with the student that is actively receiving their diploma. And then Adam Sikora will be downstairs, moving families along in the auditorium. So then the board members will be with Angel in the main stairwell, which will probably be better anyway, because you actually get to see the families. And that's where they pick up their actual diploma, and they're going to have goodie bags down there for each of the seniors. And it'll be a nice send off. So it'll give you guys a little bit more exposure with the families, and at least an opportunity to say hey and congratulate the senior versus sitting up in the balcony. And I talked a lot about that because I know that wasn't a preference. So we were trying to figure out a way to work this out so we could get a couple more family members in and give you guys an opportunity to see seniors and their families as they walk through. So we'll see how it goes.
Yep.
We'll assess it. At the end of the day, we can always do a better job, or it might be perfect. About the perfect part.
What about staff, Chad? Are we going to have a kind of receiving line for staff? Are they going to be at their rooms or?
So we changed, Tina changed that. We talked about that on Friday. So this is kind of cool. So as long as it's nice outside, which hopefully it will be, even if it's not, we're going to have staff decorate their cars. So it's going to actually be twofold, because it was a challenge to try to, if we have 5 total families walking, or 5 total family members walking down the hallway, and then we have 5, there's going to be times where we could have 10 people in a zone. So we have staff, and they're going to decorate their cars in front of the building, and then they're going to be able to be out there and cheer the kids on once they exit the building and walk back to the vehicles. So that should be really cool.
Other questions, folks?
Have you had any communication, or has Tina, from any residents or families that want to kind of do something similar to that and actually have a parade of cars as well? I've seen some things on some different Facebook sites and that they're trying to organize that.
Well, they're going
Do
to have
that
a
at
difficult time
graduation.
organizing that. Yeah, we're going to have 5 security guards and 2 Riverside police officers. We're going to have so many people rotating in and out of there. We can't have people clogging up the traffic in that parking lot. So, you know, if they choose to do that when they exit our parking lot, that's fine. But this has to flow extremely. I mean, it's a pretty tight schedule as we move people in and out. So we really can't organize something like that.
And I understand that. That's one reason I bring it up, but I don't think it would be real good if, hopefully those security people and the police officers that are handling that will handle that as gently as possible under these circumstances.
Sure.
And not a strong arm of the law, because that's going to come back and look bad on us too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal, just to keep people moving. The worst thing that you would want is a bunch of people congregating and creating a mass gathering, which we can't do that. And we're trying to follow one of the 3 options basically that the governor laid out for us in the Department of Health. So we wanted to make sure that we gave him the best in-person ceremony that we could. I mean, it's not perfect.
I think because like I adopted one of the seniors on the Stebbins, 2020 senior adoption page and all that. And I think most people understand that, at least we're doing some sort of, and no one's 100% happy with it, of course, because everybody would rather just have regular graduation at the Nutter Center. But there are those who come out really negative. There are just as many parents that are, saying, look, they're following the guidelines of, yeah, other schools are allowing more family members, but this is what they think they can do. So, I think that they're understanding, may not like it. My big thing was I was hoping that they were going to get 4 people in the balcony so that they could have 6 people, because to me that's more a number that probably be a little bit more digestible, especially with blended families, because I could see a lot of families. I know that there's a couple seniors that are thinking about not walking because they don't want to choose who gets to attend, know, and that's, and I feel bad for that.
Well, we had
a very hard worker and really deserves to walk that stage, so, but I understand, no matter how many questions I throw out there, don't think that I don't get it. And I understand what the where you're going with this and everything. And I appreciate everything everyone's done to try and make this as memorable as possible without just handing a diploma. But, I just want to make sure that we're not going to be too strong armed out there, with families, because that just,
yeah, we just have to keep them moving. So there's going to be where the families come in, they're going to park them, get them into the building. As they exit, there has to be a whole flow of people, and that's a challenge within itself to make that happen. So I mean, I went round and round with the Department of Health to try to make sure that we had everything in place that followed the guidelines to allow our families to have the best experience we could offer.
well, he's not the easiest guy to work with, and he misinterprets things a lot. So I have no faith in our Montgomery County Health Director.
No.
I know
At
it's also been mentioned multiple times, but it's not ideal at all. But we're going to be videoing it, and similar to the way other things are happening right now, as far as having to do things virtually. I mean, I don't know. I get it, but I feel like it's a really solid.
And I appreciate all the hard work. I'm not saying that. I'm just asking questions that have kind of been thrown to me, and and
They've been all thrown to me too.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
They've all been thrown to me too.
Oh, I'm sure. And that's, I could have come and talked, but I knew you were bombarded. I just wasn't going to bombard you with more graduation. I said, you know what, I'll ask my question about the number tonight, and, but I understand a little bit more that you're using the extra 2 as a rotation. I just thought, well, you're only putting 2, general, looking at it on the surface, it's, well, you're getting rid of 4. So, so that's all. But no, you guys are doing great. I appreciate everything. It's nothing's going to be ideal except for the Nutter Center to anybody, really, that's the perfect, but, we'll do the best we can with it.
Yeah, I appreciate your feedback, Julie. That's all I have, Scott.
Okay. Chad, I will say, just share it. I think there were several times that I think I've been up more over this graduation than most things. There have been a few other things that have kept me up at night, but it's interesting that I will lay awake there for a couple hours thinking of something, and then I'll call you in the morning, and invariably Chad has been up thinking about the very same issue. So at least we're on the same wavelength with some of this stuff. Maybe we're losing a little sleep, but at least we're both concerned about the same thing. I will say, Montgomery County, I've checked with some other school districts, and the health director of Montgomery County, he's been consistent with the 2 or 3 other counties I've talked with. That 10 person per building, or per room has been pretty standard across the board. So I think that's coming from the governor's directive of those 3 options. He's got that pretty well laid in there. Could it change? It could. Is it going to? 99.9% sure it's not going to change at this point. He's not willing to take that risk again to make another change. But I appreciate everything that you've put into this, Chad, and everybody, Krista, and everybody that's worked on this. It's tough. We all know what we want it to be, and when it can't get there, we're all looking for ways to make it happen. And I know Julie shares that concern, and just make it as memorable as we can. And again, I think it is going to be memorable. I'm as excited about this graduation as I've been excited about any other one, if nothing else, to see how it goes. And I'm looking forward to providing these guys something that they'll remember for a lifetime. I'm sure they will. So
let's just pray we never have to go this route again.
I agree. Yep. But I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this, and once you let them know that's been recognized. So thanks a lot. Anything else from anyone? Okay, at this time, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the meeting held April 27th, 2020. That is addendum number 1. Mr. Ellender?
In your packet is the minutes from the April 27th board meeting. If there are no additions or corrections for those minutes, I'd ask for your approval, please.
So moved, Pickle.
Second, Newhouse.
I have a second from Mrs. Newhouse. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Please call the roll.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse,
Yes.
Mrs. Denning,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Huddle.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to section 8, the financial reports and requests. I will turn that over to you, Mr. Ellender.
It's in your packet are the April financial reports, items A, B, C, and D. No questions on those. I'd ask for your approval on the April financial reports, please.
So moved, Denning.
Second, Steiner.
I have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Denning,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Huddle,
Yes.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to item E under section 8, approval of the appropriation resolution. That is addendum number 6. Mr. Ellender.
This also in your packet is the May appropriation resolution. If there are no questions on that, I'd ask for your approval also, please.
So moved, Steiner.
I'll second that. Any further questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Huddle,
Yes.
Mrs. Denning,
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse,
Yes.
Ms. Pickle.
Yes.
Thank you. Item F under section 8, approval of the May update to the 5-year forecast, and that is addendum number 7, Mr. Ellender.
All right, in your packet, you have a copy of the forecast. I am gonna actually put it up on the screen too. Hopefully that will work. Krista taught me how to do it today. But I wanted to talk about it a little bit. Because of our early board meeting this month, I had to get the forecast done and then out to you guys before we found out about the cuts last week to the state's budgets that's going to affect us. So the state foundation figure does not include the reduction, which is going to be about $350,000 in funding for this year, nor does it include whatever funding cuts might happen for next year. And at this time, we don't even know what those funding cuts could be for next year. So the state allows you to update your forecast and refile it at any point. So what I'm going to suggest is we have to file one this month. So I would ask for your approval of this forecast. And then what I'm going to suggest is once we find out what cuts may be coming for next year's state foundation funding, is we update the forecast and look at it again, hopefully in June. If not June, then July, and then we can always upload the updated forecast to the state's website. But because they require one to be posted in May, we're going to have to kind of go with what we have for now. As far as this year, we had projected somewhat of a deficit for this year already. I don't think it'll be as bad as what we projected because I don't believe everyone will spend everything in their budgets for this year. Spending has slowed down because people have been out of the buildings. We also are delaying or canceling even some projects, or just putting them off for now in order to just reduce expenses as much as possible. Going forward, we have the same issues we've always had as far as health insurance costs and that sort of thing. The district has a active health insurance committee that's working towards trying to look at alternatives for health insurance that would lower these costs in our future. And that would, of course, improve the look of the forecast quite a bit. The big unknown at this point is foundation funding, even for next year and then going into the following biennium. We don't know what this pandemic is going to do to state funding, long term. I'm hoping the recovery will happen within a year, but it could be that there's a lag to the problem for state revenues that affects us, going forward for more than a year or two. Are there any specific questions about what's going on with that? So what'll happen is we'll be lowering the state foundation funding a little bit for this year in the next revised forecast. We'll update the funding amount for next year, and then we'll also be shifting some expenses out of this forecast and into that CARES Act funding, which is the federal funding that the federal government is going to give schools to help pay part of their budget. So those things should ease the pain a little bit of the state cuts. But until we find out how much the state plans to cut our funding for next year, it's just not as meaningful. So I would say I would ask for your approval on this forecast as it is now, but then expect to look at it again and again as we get better numbers and revise it going forward.
Jerry, could you talk for just a second about, I thought it was, and board members, we may get this question, even administration, why didn't the governor dip into the rainy day fund? And Jerry, you had a good explanation for that as it relates to the CARES Act. Could you explain that to the board so they have that information for the community should it come up?
Sure. The CARES Act is the federal funding, basically the bailout money that the feds passed. And that money is flowing to the state, and then the states are going to distribute it to the local schools. So we don't get it directly from the federal government. We get it through ODE. But when the states gave the money, or when the Fed gave the money to the states, they put in what's called a maintenance of effort requirement because they don't want the states to just use it to cut back on their funding. So they require the states to spend in the future years no less than the 3-year average of their prior year's school foundation funding. So by cutting the funding in this year by a little bit, that actually lowers the amount of maintenance of effort they have to make going forward. So if they would have used a rainy day fund and just kept our funding the same for this year, it would actually hurt more going forward than what they did. So the reason that they cut the funding now and didn't plug the hole with the rainy day fund and wait till next year is because of this federal grant maintenance of effort requirement that states and schools have. And the whole idea behind maintenance of effort is just when the feds give us grant money, they don't want us to just supplant the money that we were spending locally, spend that on something else and just keep doing the same thing. They want to see federal money or grant money do something new and better. So that's the Fed's rule. That's the reason for not using the rainy day fund to plug any of the gap for this year.
It makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. I thought that was a brilliant move. I thought that's good for us to know in case we do get that question. I've had a couple people come to me already and say, well, why didn't you use the rainy day fund? I had other board members asking that out across the state. And, I thought it was a brilliant move doing that. So.
Yeah, and another piece of that I told you about, Scott, that I'll tell everybody is whenever the state was looking at how much cash on hand school districts have to try to decide whether they could handle this cut or not, they added up all of the schools' reserve balances, and it adds up to about $8 million. And that's the state rainy day fund only has like 2.6 billion in it. So the state says, the schools cash on hand is more than the state even has in its rainy day fund. So they felt like that most school districts could handle the cut with the cash that they have in reserves. There are some districts that probably don't and will really be hurting. I mean, we are fortunate that we have reserves and we can handle it. And probably most districts, can bear with it using their reserves to get by.
Yeah. So no good deed goes unpunished, right?
That's right. That's what we have reserves for, though, is, if this kind of thing happens that we can get by.
Yep, that's right. Okay. So do I have approval approval for the 5-year forecast for Addendum 7?
Denning.
Second, Newhouse.
All right.
Any further questions or comments, team? Please
Thank
call the
you.
roll.
Mrs. Denning,
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse,
Yes.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Huddle.
Yes. Item G of Section 8, Resolution 2006 regarding payment of staff during school closure due to pandemic, and that is Addendum number 8.
Week before last, the state auditor, Keith Faber, held a statewide Zoom meeting with all the school treasurers and finance officers for everything in the state. And he made a recommendation that we pass these 2 resolutions, this resolution 2006 and 2007. Under the law, the Ohio Revised Code requires school districts to continue to pay employees that are displaced from work during a pandemic. So legally, we don't really have a choice. So a lot of school treasurers thought, why do we need to do this? Because by law, we have to keep paying people that already have a contract issued by the board. But the auditor, he's a new state auditor, and in some ways people think maybe he's being just a little aggressive here or so. But anyway, he told us all that we needed to pass these resolutions because his thinking was, well, the law says that we can pay everybody, but that doesn't mean that we will, or some, it was kind of a convoluted argument, but anyway, he's just saying we need to pass these resolutions. So we're doing it so when I'm audited or we're audited next year, that they can look back and see that we pass these resolutions. One is that we're continuing to pay staff their regular contracted salaries. The second one is the spring supplemental contracts that were already issued to people also. So that's what the two resolutions are about. You guys have any questions about those before we vote on them?
So we're paying the coaches their supplemental, even though they didn't coach?
Yes.
England, yes.
Okay,
And again, by law, we have to.
right.
Yeah, we got that part. Yeah.
Is there anything we can do in the future in case something like this happens that would allow us not to have to do that?
We would need to have some new language in our collective bargaining agreements that would allow for something like this. The other thing we can do that we're doing right now for the fall is we're not going to issue all of the fall supplemental contracts until we know for a fact there's actually going to be fall sports. We are looking at giving contracts, and Nisha can address this a little more. But we're giving them to like our head coaches and people that we don't want to lose and that probably still have some work to do in the background getting ready for possible fall sports.
Yeah, just the head coaches at the high school. The middle schools, they don't have head coaches. They're not considered head coaches. So we would have some in June that we would be hiring, but not all the other people, not all the support people until we know what's going on.
What about band? Summer camp and summer, obviously we don't know if summer camp's going to go on, but does the band contract, does that fall under the current contract or next year's contract where we would potentially negotiate that?
We already hired for extended days. If you
Last
remember,
one.
yeah, for
right.
extended days for August because we weren't going to be in school in August.
Right.
I mean, at that time, all we knew is that we weren't going to be in school in August and they would need those extended days in order to keep working with the students that weren't in school yet. But that was before COVID-19 occurred.
Yep. Okay.
Yes, band and ROTC, Scott, are handled a little differently. Those teachers have extended days in the summer rather than a supplemental contract like a coach does.
Okay. Understood. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Jared, I think we can do both of these at the same time, can't we? As Addendum 8 and Addendum 9, Resolution 2007, or do we need to do these separately?
No, we need to do them separately.
Okay. All right.
Each require a vote.
Okay, so I will ask for a motion on Resolution 2006 regarding payment of staff during school closure due to pandemic, and that is Addendum 8. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Pickle.
I will second it. Any questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mr. Huddle,
Yes.
Mrs. Denning,
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then, of course, Addendum number 9 is the same issue under supplemental contracts, which is Resolution 2007 regarding payment of supplemental contracts during the school closure due to pandemic. Do I have a motion to accept this resolution?
So moved, Pickle.
Second, Newhouse.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions on the supplemental contract resolution? Please call the roll.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse,
Yes.
Mrs. Denning,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Huddle.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no items of old business, we will move on to new business. And with that, it'll be section 10. Item A, resignations and retirements, addendum number 10 and 10A. Ms. Nicholas.
For resignations, we have a classified substitute. Under 10A, we have a retirement of a certificate teacher, Ron Dykler, science teacher at Stebbins High School.
Approved, Denning.
Second, Pickle.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Denning,
Yes.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse,
yes,
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Hubble.
Yes. Item B under section 10, employment, addendum number 11 and 11A. Ms. Nicholas.
So here we have a situation under certificated with coaches. They should have been hired for 1920. They were actually hired under 2021, which has been revised because it was a mistake basically. And then one was a revised step.
Do I have a motion?
So
Do
moved, Pickle.
I have a second?
Second, Steiner.
I'm sorry, Scott, I didn't do 11A, so I'll do
Oh,
that.
okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That was my fault.
That's okay.
Addendum 11A, certificated. These are our RISE employees that we have at this point. There's a possibility of a few more added, but right now we have the instructional leader and instructional support teachers, secretary, academic teachers, STEM teachers. And again, there could be a few more, but we wanted to get these on before the June board meeting. And then we have under classified general maintenance under 11A.
So moved, Pickle.
Do I have a second?
Denning.
Okay. Thank you, Nisha. Too many papers flying around here. I didn't see I had 11A, so.
You
Okay, I
said
have
it.
a motion and a second. Any questions? Comments? Please call the roll.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mrs. Denning,
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse,
yes,
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Hubble.
Yes. Moving on to item C, which is to approve the equipment rental agreement for 2020 to 2021 with Montgomery County ESC for 8 buses. And that is addendum number 12, and that is Mr. Ellender.
This is just the agreement we have with the ESC for them letting us to use their buses. We have 8 buses of theirs that we use, and we have this agreement between us. They only charge us $1 per bus a year, but it's mainly just to have an agreement in writing over the use of their buses. I'd ask for your approval on that, please.
So moved, Denning.
second, Newhouse,
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments to the agreement? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Denning,
Yeah.
Mrs. Newhouse,
yes,
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Hubble.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we will be under section D, or item D under section 10, which is to approve the 2020 to 2021 student handbooks. And that's Mrs. Rastetter, who's been working diligently on this, I know.
So the handbooks, hopefully you got a few different documents that came along with that. The goal was to give you the samples and the drafts of where they are now, but then I also tried to just do kind of condensed sheets. So one of them was called something like 5 through 12 handbooks. It was like a cheat sheet. I don't have that in front of me how you guys are seeing it, but that's a document that I just felt like kind of simplified the true work that we did this year instead of having to try to read through all of them and figure out, what was changed. So I really just
Yeah, that was really good.
Thank you.
Good. I just wanted to highlight a couple of those for 512. One was the visitor policy. We really spent some time as an admin team talking through that because sometimes what happens, it seems to be, even though we have something in writing, the practice at the building may or may not actually follow that. So we really talked through that. And then it was interesting because even when we agreed on the policy and I sent that out, when I received one or two of the drafts, it still wasn't what exactly we had said. And so I think that whole process has really helped me see, like, it's got to be double, triple checked to really get these things consistent. So this year we kind of picked out a few of these hotspot areas, which was visitor policies. And then we really talked through like our aim that we run at the middle and high school. And then we had to have some talking a little bit about vaping and how that's been added to tobacco use and some things there. So those were some of the ones we really focused on and got to consensus. So again, I gave you that update of like, this is consistent now in 5 through 12. If it applies to the elementary, it's also consistent there, like visitors, but sometimes the elementary is going to have a little bit of different things, obviously, than the other. And I think I did like an elementary based cheat sheet also that kind of just highlighted, these are the changes. So if you need to see what we're really changing, that's what's really changing. The only other point I wanted to make, there is a couple buildings that are still now working on their schedules because all the timing is changing. And so that is why it's still a draft, because there's a few buildings trying to make some additional scheduling changes, and those will still need to happen. But policy wise, we should be good to go. And then my plan is that next year, as we hit this time, there's a few others like I really want to address. So we're going to hit dress code next year. And if you guys as board members are feeling like there's another 1 or 2 areas you're hearing or noticing, I'd love to hit those. But I think every year we just have to continue to make it more consistent. And a lot of the times the law changes and we need to reflect that.
Thank you, Andrea, because this has been a pet peeve of mine for a few years. They are getting there. They are much better than when I first decided to open my mouth and say, well, wait a minute, we can't approve these until after they're printed. Your cheat sheet, I got the one for elementary. I didn't get the one for the other buildings in my packet, but went through them. A couple of the areas that I had noticed were really good. We still have some typos, but that's, you know, I'm not a red penner, but just reading a few areas, I noticed a few. But thank you for your work, and they're getting there. They're getting very consistent across the board, which is what I really want to see, you know, as much as possible. And I think the dress code is going to be a huge one. And thank you for putting that on your target list, because it's hard for parents to go from one building to the next, and all of a sudden the dress code changes drastically in some cases, especially middle school seems to be a big one that all of a sudden parents are like, what, you know? So thank you for that. Thanks for your work. And I know this year was a little bit more daunting because of the situation we're in, but thank you very much.
No problem. And Julie, if you see typos, like, tell me, like, text me a picture where you see that, because that drives me crazy and we want to get that fixed.
Some of it's just like, I don't know, it should be a 2 instead of a the, or, you know, something simple, but, you know, I have a child that doesn't like to read, so it's been hard to red pen it the way I normally would.
I really liked this process, Andrea, because I think what's different about it than the past, especially for me, is how much the principals are engaging in policy discussions. And it's bringing these policies to the forefront that maybe they just typically don't have in front of them. We'll typically call one of us, you know, when it's a policy type question. So it's just been a different process this year, and I really appreciate it. I think you've done a great job.
And I love hearing that that they're actually listening to the policies and understanding them, because I think in some cases, some of the ones that were kind of changed, it looks like there was 1 or 2 of them that we were in the process of changing that were tweaked even more this year, that a lot of it was just the buildings misinterpreting or setting up their own guidelines, not really following the board policy that was there. So I think having them, you know, participate in that will help our buildings even operate more seamlessly from building to building and have that, you know, continuity. So I appreciate you taking that initiative to do that, Andrea.
Andrea, I know we used to, do they sign off that they receive the handbook and understand that they actually received it in case there's a question of whether they knew how to follow a procedure or not?
I believe it's now moved to one of the online forms in OneView, because now our handbook is actually also there. So I know at the elementary and maybe even middle, we still do a printed copy, but yeah, there's a sign, they have to kind of do an electronic signature that they've seen the handbook, and that's all part of OneView. And so they can see the handbook in OneView and also then sign for it.
Oh, okay, I just wondered, because we had some issues years ago where they were, I couldn't remember exactly what it was, but whether they knew of that school policy or not, and we were able to show that they signed off that they received the information. So I just wondered if that was still going on. Thank you.
I have just a timeline question on this from printing. When do these have to go to print for the handbooks? Will we?
Correct me, Chad, if this is wrong, but typically I mean, it's pretty quick. Like, we've been able to send in June and get them back. So
Okay.
like, we're easily, kind of, it's a early summer job, I would say, typically.
That's right. The reason I'm asking is I'm looking at the dismissal times and arrival times, and I got to thinking, what if we're doing something different after we do our planning for next year, knowing that schedules might change? Or do we have the ability to hold off sending this out? Do we do that? Or do we print it as it is and then just make an adjustment as we need to, do an addendum and send out a one-page addendum to it? Is that probably what we would do? Any idea, any thoughts on that, or how we would handle that?
So the only ones that go to print anymore is elementary, 5, 6, and 7, 8. High school's all electronic.
Okay.
Andrea said we put it all on OneView. So once those are updated, it's really easy to, if we have to make a revision, we can make that revision,
Okay.
have your approval, and then literally just email it out to the parents, because we have all their email addresses either through OneView or
Nice.
through the Blackboard communication tool, as long as they've given us their email address. And in order to enroll their child in OneView, they have to have an email address. So that's really worked out pretty well. So we can have it on the website, we can have it in OneView, and we can email it out to all the parents.
Nice. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the calendars as presented?
Motion to approve the handbooks as presented.
Okay,
Second, Steiner.
have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments from the board? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Denning,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse,
yes,
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mr. Huddle.
Yes. Mrs. Rastetter, thank you very much. A lot of hard work on it. Okay, moving on to item E under section 10 is to approve the contract with Oscar W. Larson Company for the new fuel tank project. Addendum number 13, Mr. Ellender, and to the board, that's what came across today in the addendum. In case you don't have it, it's a lot to print there, but you also got the electronic copy. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Ellender. Oh, you know what? You're on mute.
You're right, sorry.
That's all right.
This is the actual contract with the contractor that the architect prepared. This is a standard contract that architects use. Last month you approved the bid with them, but this is the actual contract. So if I could get your approval, please.
I have a motion to approve the contract.
so moved,
Second, Steiner.
A motion by Mrs. Newhouse and a second by Mrs. Steiner. Any questions or comments from the rest of the board on the contract?
Jerry, I know you told me, but could you tell me again, where'd you say the new tank was going to be located?
It's going to be over on the Mad River Middle side of the bus parking lot, where now it's on the back side from Mad River Middle, like over back by the maintenance building is where it is now.
Uh-huh.
But the new place, it will be up all right inside the fence line over towards Mad River Middle School.
Is that where the lion's shed is?
Their shed is, no, it's in the back. Their shed's more in the back. This is kind of along the side. So you know the driveway that goes along the side of Mad River Middle as you're heading past where the cafeteria side is?
Oh, mhm.
It'll be along that fence, but on the
Oh,
inside
okay.
of the fence.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. Newhouse,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mrs. Denning,
Yes.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mr. Huddle.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, item F under section 10, the non-renewal of classified contracts, and that's addendum 14, Ms. Nicholas, and that is in your packets.
This is not due to performance, but because of reducing and need to reduce an aid in transportation with the change in our routes.
Do I have a motion and second?
So moved, Denning.
Second Pickle.
Any questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Denning,
Yes.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Huddle.
Yes. Thank you. Item G under section 10 is the non-negotiated salary schedule, which is addendum 15, Ms. Nicholas.
On the non-negotiated salary schedule, there are 3 changes under the per hour support, ELL support, and intervention support. And those are based on the base salary with the 3%. So those change yearly.
Do I have a motion and second?
So moved Pickle.
Second, Steiner.
Any questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Huddle,
Yes.
Mrs. Newhouse,
Yes.
Mrs. Denning.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're approaching the end of the board meeting here. We'll turn it over to board member comments, and I'm going to look at my Brady Bunch list here, and I see Mrs. Pickle at the top. So I'll start with you, Mrs. Pickle. Any questions or comments you have to say?
No, I guess to say what everyone else has said, thank you, everybody, for all the hard work you've done so far, for working beyond what, everyone was expecting you to do. And I think, and kudos to our teachers out there. I'm in a lot of schools. I traveled 1,000 miles in the past 2 weeks going to all the schools that I needed to go to. And we're doing so much more than what they're doing. Most of these schools are doing virtual graduation. That's why I'm traveling to all of them. So, so thank you for all your hard work. It really does mean a lot. And I've changed a lot of, things that I was thinking even, about graduation, just based on what I've seen out there. We're doing much more than what a lot of schools are doing. So again, thank you, everybody.
Okay, we'll do Hollywood Squares, and I see you right there, Mrs. Steiner, right by sharing the square with Mrs. Pickle. So go ahead.
I just keep telling everybody in the community, by the time this whole thing's over with and the kids get back to school, I think parents are going to appreciate our teachers and our support staff a lot more by the time this thing is over. They'll have a better understanding of how much effort it takes to educate a child just daily, day after day. So just thanks to everyone and all their hard work.
Thank you, Marilyn. Mrs. Newhouse.
Just tagging along with what Chris and Marilyn said. I have a personal view where I get to see what my grandson does, and I'm just amazed daily.
Yeah.
Mrs. Denning.
Well, I already said my thank yous and that, and I do appreciate everything that's going on, and it is a rough time for everybody. And it's rough, some of the seniors and that, but I think most everybody understands. And I do believe the staff has done a really good job. And Chad, you've done good in, keeping us up to date and keeping the emails flowing. And I'm sure it's been very overwhelming. So I hope that once graduation is over, you take at least a long weekend to yourself and Miss Simpson as well, and kind of rejuvenate and move forward. But a couple things I did want to bring up that's more business related is, do we know how many, and these are kind of like questions, you can get me answers later, but how many students went through OneView and did not ask for the paper packets when we did that last year? And my other one was, with everything we're learning with the COVID-19 pandemic, in case any of this would, God forbid, we ever have to go through something like this again, are there things that policies and things like that, board policies, we should be looking at to, I hate to say this, but to protect the financial stability of our district, and like some of the supplemental contracts, and what are some ways in that? Is there things that we need to do and need to look at in case this ever comes up again? Is there things that we need to negotiate and put into the contracts with the unions? Just different things like that. I really feel Chad's probably, and Jerry's already looking at this, but I just want to make sure that we are kind of looking at what are some of the things we may need to look at in the future.
Julie, we are talking about those sort of things as we have meetings each week, and I participate in a treasurers group meeting with most of the treasurers in Southwest Ohio every week, and attorneys have also been speaking on there, and so that's come up a lot, is like, what can we do about employment contracts? What might we do in the future, or how do we prepare for the fall? And that's why some of the suggestions were things like not issuing fall supplemental contracts until we know we have, fall sports. But we've also talked about things like, options like RIFs and furloughs, and what are the differences in those. So there is a lot of discussion about those things going on in the planning.
I just want to make sure that it's not that I want to see anyone not get paid, or hurt anyone's household, but we also, I think, as good stewards of the district's money, we have to look at, what does this mean? Most of the teachers who had something in our packets and things like that, or if we get to where we're actually doing the online classes, it'll look a little different, I think, for our residents than just seeing a bunch of staff who aren't working the normal hours but getting paid the same. And I think for someone who is not in a union and doesn't understand that makeup, it's hard for them to understand why we're still paying everybody 100% of their salary. I'm not saying I'm for, but I'm just saying we need to look at what could we do? Because if this ever happens again, they're going to come in and cut our budgets. And
the continuation of payment of employees is not because of the union, but because of state law. It's actually in the Ohio Revised Code.
Thank you.
Like Jerry said, that's been a topic that we've had some guidance on, and a lot of conversation through BASA, and it's Britain, just a lot of unknowns with that, and how to maybe work through that if this does happen in the future. As far as OneView and kindergarten enrollment, that's something that Andrea had the pleasure of being tasked with this year. So I kind of transitioned that from me to her. So she's worked with the preschool enrollment and then the kindergarten enrollment, and they actually worked on crafting a follow-up notification and some information that is to go out. Andrea, I don't know if you had a conversation with Heather as far as how many forms have been filled out up to this point.
Yeah, Julie, we could get you a number probably tomorrow. I know that Heather has taken everyone that's registered at all 4 buildings, and they've already gone through and made all their corrections to that. I'm just not sure of how many per building. but I know for a fact, I know there's at least 50 at Brantwood. Like, so there's some that are really moving, and we're kind of now doing two prongs. Like, we really need our families that have registered to now finish that process, because it's just different this year. And then we're also trying to reach out to those families that haven't done anything, because we got to capture them in as well. So that's kind of two, but I'm happy to talk with Heather and we could give you where are we right now?
Even if, and I don't know if this falls into your realm, even beyond kindergarten, because I had heard, you know, some families say, well, I just requested the paper packet, you know, like last year when we, you know, were doing it. And so I was just wondering overall, even, are we seeing that, you know, we have 80% of families doing it, 90%, 100%, you know, what, you know, is everybody embracing the online paperwork? Just so that we're not
So this is our transition year beyond kindergarten. So last year we piloted everything with kindergarten during the kindergarten enrollment fair, which is awesome because we had a huge captive audience, and we had a setup in the staff development room where we had support in there to help parents work through the forms and fill them out. This year we had to give them guidance as far as what that looks like, and then we gave them Heather's contact information in case they had any questions as they work through that process. So any new enrollees coming into the district this year will use OneView versus the paper pencil form. And then we're going to have kiosks in each of the offices in each building where the parents can actually get on OneView and the secretary can work with them, or somebody in the office can work with them to get on, establish an account, and then register online. So we'll see a lot more of that once we have more established hours. June 1, all 10, 11, 12 months go back full time, regular hours. Right now it's just a Tuesday, Thursday, 10 to 2 in each building, except for central office, we're open 10 to 2 daily. So we'll have a better feel for that in August, Julie.
Okay, I was just curious because I know, because you were talking about if we had to do updates, you know, we have Blackboard and we have the OneView. And I just, you know, last year was my first year using it.
Yeah.
And I didn't find it to be difficult or anything like that, you know, but I do know, I heard from a couple of families of like, no, I just went and got the paper. I just went and got the paper forms. I'm not going to do that, you know? So I was not as concerned about kindergartners because it's easy to tell them this is just the way we do it, you know, because they haven't been here yet. But it's the other grades. I was wondering how we were, you know, doing with that. Just out of curiosity, you know.
Nice thing with the new Blackboard system, and one call didn't allow for this. When we push out all those notifications, whether it's the mobile app, email, we have 5 to 7 different modalities to communicate information out, and we can put that link right in there, and all you do is click on it and it goes right to OneView, and then they can just pop that up and work through that. So we have a better communication tool now that we transition to Blackboard as well. I think that'll help as families coach. That way they don't have to navigate through the website. We just send a link to them, they just click on it and they can go through and fill out their forms.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. You know, I'll just round out with board comments. You know, I've been thinking this week, you know, when I first ran for the board years ago, first time I ran, Chris, you were on the board then, Marilyn, you were on the board then. And when I ran, there was no such thing as building schools, but less than 6 months later, after I ran and was elected, we get into this $88 million building project. And I remember thinking to myself, I didn't sign up for this. That wasn't where I wanted to be, but we had good leaders. We had Ben and Charlie, and you guys were, you know, Chris, you've been doing it a long time, and we had some good leadership. You know, Nisha was there, and, you know, the central office staff just kind of kept things moving along. Alex was phenomenal at handling all those building contracts and really pushing the contractors where we needed to push them. And even though when it first came out, it wasn't really what I was looking for and wasn't quite expecting all the work that went with that, more so than what a normal board member would have. And I compare that to running for an election this last time, and less than 6 months later, we're talking about pandemics and doing school a whole new way and things that, you know, we couldn't go to anybody to say, how does this work? We could go to other people who've done building projects, and we did. If you guys remember that, we did. We talked to other school districts, and we could go to them and say, tell us what worked and what didn't. Well, this time, I think I think you guys as leaders from the administration standpoint really need to give yourselves a little bit of pat on the back, because there was nowhere to go to find this stuff. There was no one you could go to say, how'd you handle your pandemic last year? We're all in the same boat. And I will tell you that our district has handled this very, very well compared to some districts I've talked to. Not that anybody's handled it bad, but I think it just speaks to the leadership of the administration. So I appreciate what you guys do on a daily basis. And I think I've appreciated it more now than I ever have, given what we've all kind of gone through. So, you know, Jerry, I don't think you've ever had to budget for a pandemic before, but, you know, appreciate what everybody does here. Just, you know, from my standpoint, it's heartfelt. And again, thanks for all the work that each one of you have to do with that. So before we call for an adjournment, I'll let any administration speak if they want to speak, if anything to say. If not,
You better ask.
okay.
What time do we need to be there for graduation again?
4:30. Thank you for
4:30.
saying that. May 21st. Have I got the date right?
Right,
4:30, right? Okay. In your cap and gown.
in our cap and gown?
Yep.
The cap just down.
This gown.
Thank you. Not your cap, but what's the sash? The
This
sash.
gown. I'm sorry.
No, that's what I meant.
Mask and gown.
That's what you
That's
provide.
right. Yeah, you're right.
So, Chad, is anything else we need to know about that from the standpoint of?
No, just right. You'll have to come a little bit earlier, Scott, because you, myself, and Chris, or I'm sorry, not Krista, Tina will give our speeches and they'll record that prior to families coming in. So I'll give you more details about that once I get that from Tina. It'll probably be more of a 4 o'clock time for us.
Okay. Okay, very good. So will they have the that recording will be at the end? I mean, it's not something that's going to be played for every person walking through, right? That's going to be something that's going to be part of the video, I take it, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're just going to pre-record our speeches. And
Okay.
then add that within the video that Jamie Rance is going to put together for us.
And we've timed this out. We'll do this in one night, right?
I'm
Okay.
believing in Mrs. Simpson. She has a plan.
I keep doing the math. I'm thinking we're going to be there till 3 o'clock in the morning, but I'll take your.
Saying that, I think we will.
They're on the news. I forget what district it is, but they're taking 3 nights
Yes.
to do their graduation.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
that's a lot.
Tina is a scheduling machine.
Yeah.
Tina thing. So I have faith.
I have no
In
problem with
Simpson, we
that.
trust.
Yeah, I lay awake
You
doing
need
that.
sure it's made up with that, Chad.
Bring refreshments.
Okay. If nothing else, I'll ask for an adjournment for the meeting.
So moved, Pickle.
Second, Denny.
And I have a second. Any questions or comments? Mr. Eleanor, please call the roll.
Ms. Pickle,
Yes.
Mr. Denny,
Sure.
Mrs. Newhouse,
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Hubble.
Yes.